Pregnant bride dumped at a crossroads in snow. A cowboy took her in and fathered her child. The mule wouldn't stop looking at the crossroads. I'd been watching her ears for 2 hours, the way they'll tell you what's ahead before your own eyes do, and she kept swinging them east, then north, then back east again. I almost didn't stop. The snow was coming sideways by then, and I had 12 miles still to make before dark and a load of fence wire that was rusting under the tarp. A man learns not to listen to weather when he's got work to get back to. But Della, that was the mule. Della planted her feet. She'd done it once before in her life, on a trail above the Cimarron where I couldn't see what she could, and I'd overridden her and lost a pack horse in a washout. 12 feet of frozen drop into nothing. I heard it go. So I'd made a deal with Della after that. She stops, I stop. I stopped. There was something dark at the crossroads post. The snow had built up on it, and I thought at first it was a coat somebody'd shed. But it moved. Just barely. A settling the way something live does when it's been still too long and its body makes a small correction without the mind's permission. I got down and walked to it in the dark and the cold. She was sitting against the post with her knees drawn up as far as they'd draw up, which wasn't very far. She had on a white dress, wedding dress, I understood later, though by then it was gray and soaked through, and a coat that hadn't been made for a winter like this one, a thin brown wool thing with the buttons done up crooked like she'd fastened them in the dark or in a hurry or both. Her hair was loose, black against the snow. She looked up at me. Her eyes were open, I don't know how. "You hurt," I said. She shook her head. "How long you been out here?" She tried to say something and nothing came. Her lips were white at the edges. I picked her up. She weighed almost nothing despite everything, which told me she hadn't eaten properly in some time, and she didn't fight me, which told me she was past the point of pride. I got her up onto the seat of the wagon, no room in the back with all the wire, and tucked the only dry thing I had, a grain sack, around her feet and got Della moving again. The mule went without complaint, like the job was done. I didn't ask her anything on the way in. The cold had a hold on her I didn't want to disturb. I talked to the mule instead, the way I always did, just to keep some sound in the air, and after a while the girl's shaking eased and she leaned against my shoulder without meaning to, and I let her. It was 7 miles to the ranch, felt like more that night. My name is Caleb Das. I've been on this land since I was 23 years old, which at the point of that story made it going on 31 years. I built the house myself, the barn myself, the fences with 2 hired hands who are long since gone. I ran cattle and I ran horses, and I did both reasonably well, and I didn't owe any man anything, which is all I ever asked of a life. I had been married once, a good woman, Vera, who died of a fever in the 3rd year we were here. And after that I kept the house the way a man keeps a house when there's nobody watching, which is to say it was clean but not warm, if you take my meaning. Functional, a place to be out of the weather. I had no children. I had not expected any more. I put the girl in Vera's room. It was the only proper bedroom. I'd been sleeping in the back room off the kitchen for years because there was no reason to keep the front one, and I built the fire up so high the windows sweated, and I found one of Vera's flannel nightgowns in the chest at the foot of the bed, still folded the way Vera had folded it, and I set it on the chair by the door without going in. I knocked twice. "There's dry clothes on the chair," I said. "I'll have something hot when you're ready." I didn't know what to do about the rest of it, the plainly visible fact of her condition, so I just didn't address it. There'd be time. She came out in the nightgown with a blanket around her shoulders and sat at the kitchen table like she wasn't sure she'd been invited, and I put beef broth in front of her. I'd had it going since that morning, didn't know why, just felt like the right thing to make on a cold day, and she drank it the way a person drinks something when they're trying to do it slow but can't quite manage. Both hands around the mug. I sat across from her and let her drink. When she set the mug down, she said, "I'm sorry to be in your house." "Don't be," I said. "I don't have any money. I don't have," she stopped. "I don't have anything." "I didn't ask." She looked at me then. Not the way you look at someone when you're grateful and performing it, but like she was trying to read something in my face that she needed to understand before she could decide whether to sleep or keep watching. I've seen horses do it. I've seen dogs do it after they've been kicked. It's not distrust exactly. It's just the careful intelligence of a creature that has learned not to assume. "My name is Nora," she said. "Caleb Das," I said. "This is my ranch." She nodded slowly. Her eyes went down to the mug. They left me at the crossroads. She said a name, I won't say it here, he doesn't deserve to be in this account. He said he'd changed his mind, he said there was another woman. He put me out of the wagon with my coat and $3 and drove off. She said it the way you say something you've already made a kind of peace with. Not because you're not angry, but because you had the whole afternoon in the snow to be angry, and now you're just tired. You're safe here, I said. She looked up. I mean that plain, I said. Not as anything else, you're safe in this house. She held my eyes for a second, and then she nodded, and I could see something shift. Not all the way, but enough. The first 2 weeks were quiet. She slept a great deal, which was right. I cooked because I'd cooked for years, and it wasn't a hardship, and she ate, and she got some color back. By the 3rd week, she was up and doing things before I could stop her, washing dishes, sweeping the porch, mending a tear in the curtain I hadn't looked at in 6 years. I told her she didn't need to do any of that. I need to do something, she said, and that was the end of it. I understood that, the need to be useful. Some people have it in them like a North Star. You take it away from them and they don't know which way they're pointed. She was 22 years old. She told me in pieces, not all at once. The way a person tells things they're not ready to say in full. She'd come west from Ohio with this man who had represented himself as a rancher with good land and a going operation, which was a lie on every count. He had a shack and a bad reputation and debts up and down the territory. She hadn't known any of that until she was already here. She'd written to her family, but the letter came back. Her father had remarried and the new wife had made things plain. There was nowhere to go back to. So the crossroads, she said. So the crossroads, I said. She was quiet a moment. The stove ticked. Outside the snow had started again, a gentler kind this time. The baby, she said, and stopped. I know about the baby, I said. I don't know what to do, I know, she pressed her lips together. I know how it looks, a woman in my position in your house. I don't put much stock in how things look, I said. She looked at me. Nora, I've lived alone on this land for 20-some years. I'm not going to ask you to leave in the middle of winter in your condition. And I'm not going to ask you to leave in the spring either, if you've nowhere to go and no good reason to. She shook her head. You don't even know me. I know you held yourself together at a crossroads in a blizzard in a wedding dress, I said. That's not nothing. She laughed, the first time I'd heard her laugh. It was short and a little surprised, like she hadn't expected to, and it changed her whole face. I went back to eating my supper, but I was aware that something had shifted the way the air shifts before rain, not toward anything dramatic, just shifted. I want to be honest about what those months were, because I've told this story wrong in my own head for years, cleaned it up, made it prettier than it was. The truth is it was hard, not between us, that was the easy part which surprised me, but the practical weight of it. A pregnant woman in a ranch house in a bad winter, alone except for a man who knew cattle and horses and almost nothing else. I didn't know what she needed. I didn't know what to do when she was sick in the mornings, which was most mornings, so I just kept the fire and kept the kettle on and tried to stay out of the way without being gone. I didn't know what to do when she cried once, just once that I saw, sitting at the table at 4 in the morning. I came out for water and she was there with her hands flat on the table and her head down, not making any sound, just her shoulders shaking. I sat down across from her and I didn't say anything. I just sat there. After a while, she lifted her head. I'm not usually like this, she said. You're allowed, I said. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. I had a picture of how it was going to be, coming west, a house that was mine, someone who, she stopped. I just had a picture. The pictures lie, I said, not mean just the truth of it. She looked out the dark window, then she said, what was it like for you coming here? I told her about being 23 and green and the first 3 winters and Vera and losing the pack horse and the years I almost sold the place. I talked for an hour, maybe more. I'm not a man who talks easily, but I talked that night. And she listened the way some people listen, where you can feel them actually taking it in, not just waiting for their turn to speak. When I finished, she said, you built something real. Had to, I said. No, I mean, she searched for it. Some men just endure, you built something, that's different. I didn't know what to say to that. I looked at my hands on the table. I see that, she said, quiet. Whatever else you think of yourself. The doctor came out in February. Doc Haynes, who'd been in the territory since before me and had delivered half the children in 2 counties. He came in the house and examined Nora and came out to where I was working in the barn. "She's small," he said, "but healthy. The baby's healthy, maybe 6 weeks." I nodded. He looked at me. "You done right by her, Caleb." "She's in my house," I said. "That's all." He picked up his bag. "You know what the talk is." "I know what the talk is." "Doesn't bother you?" "Other men's mouths have never bothered me much," I said. He smiled. He was 80-some and had seen everything twice. "No," he said, "I guess they haven't." He drove off. I went back to work. The talk was what you'd expect. Word travels in a territory like water over rock. It gets everywhere eventually. People in town, the women at the dry goods who stopped talking when Nora came in, the men who nodded to me and then looked away too fast, which meant they'd been saying something about me when I wasn't around. Eli Stearns, who ranched to the southeast of me and had always thought well of himself, made a comment to me at the feed store. He said it with a smile like it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. I set down the sack I was carrying and looked at him. I am not a large man. I was never the biggest in any room. But I've been on this land 30 years, and I've worked hard every day of those years, and I've kept my word, and I've dealt with men who were harder than Eli Stearns, and there is a kind of stillness a man gets after enough years of just doing the right thing without anyone watching. It doesn't shout. It doesn't have to. Eli Stearns finished talking. I picked up my sack. "You say something like that again," I told him, "about that woman or about me, I'll hear about it, and then I'll come to you directly. We clear." He was. I don't say this to make myself out to be a hard man. I was just a tired man who'd brought a woman in from the snow and tried to do right by her, and I wasn't going to let Eli Stearns' small mouth make it into something dirty. The baby came on a night in March when the wind had been up for 3 days and the temperature was still wrong for the season. Doc Haynes came out again, and I spent 6 of the longest hours of my life in the barn with the horses, because there was nothing useful I could do in the house, and the sound of it, a woman in that work, was something I didn't know how to hold. At 2 in the morning, Doc Haynes came to the barn door. "Boy," he said, "both fine." I sat down on a hay bale, just sat. The horses moved around me in the dark, their breath big and warm. After a while, I went in. She was in the bed with the lamp low, and the boy was wrapped in flannel against her arm, and she looked up when I came in the doorway, and her face was, I can't say exactly what it was. Worn to the bone and something else underneath the bone, something that hadn't been there before, a kind of settledness. "You want to see him?" she said. I crossed the room. I looked down at the boy. He was red and strange-looking the way newborns are, his eyes squinted against even the little light, his fists up by his ears. "He's healthy," I said. "He's healthy." I reached out and put 2 fingers against his cheek without thinking, just to feel him. His skin was the softest thing I've ever touched in my life. He turned his face toward my hand. I stood up. "Caleb," she said. I looked at her. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to know you can say no." "All right," I said. "I want to stay," she said. "If you'll have us, not because I have nowhere else." Because she held my eyes. Because this is where I want to be, this house, this land, with you. She shifted the boy a little. "I know how that sounds. I know you didn't sign on for any of this. I know." "Nora," I said. She stopped. I pulled the chair over and sat down close to the bed. I thought about what to say, and I didn't have anything grand, so I just said it plain. I've been on this land alone for a long time. I'd gotten used to it. I thought maybe that was just how it was going to go. I looked at the boy, then at her. "I don't think that anymore." She held my eyes. She wasn't performing anything. She wasn't afraid. She was just looking at me the way she'd looked at me that first night at the kitchen table, reading something in my face. Only this time, whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. "Okay," she said. That was it. That was all of it. We married in April, small, just Doc Haynes and a preacher from Guthrie who drove out and stood in the yard because the weather had finally broken, and the yard was the right place to do it. Nora wore a blue dress she'd made herself from cloth I'd gotten at the dry goods, and she had the boy on her hip, which the preacher didn't even blink at, good man that he was. When it was done, the preacher said, "You want to say anything to each other, go ahead." Nora looked at me, then she said, "You're the best man I've ever known." I didn't say anything back. I couldn't get past the thing in my throat. I just took her hand. We named the boy Henry. He grew up on this land. He learned to ride before he could really walk, the way ranch kids do, just up on the horse because it's there. And he grew into a serious, capable boy who looked like his mother around the eyes, but had a way of going still and quiet when he was thinking hard that she always said was mine. He called me Pa from the time he could talk. We never made it complicated. The man who'd left his mother at a crossroads might as well not have existed. As far as Henry was concerned, as far as the land was concerned, as far as I was concerned, I was his father. That's the whole of it. There are men who came through this territory who did big things. Men who made names. Men the newspapers wrote about and who people talked about for years after. I wasn't one of those men. I never drew a gun in anger, never bossed a big outfit, never had a deed on more land than I could work. I just built the fences and ran the cattle and did it year after year until the land was mine in the way that things only get to be yours after you've put enough years into them. But here's what I know. The night I stopped at that crossroads because a mule put her feet down, the night I carried a woman in from the snow and made her broth and put her in the good room and told her she was safe, that might be the most important thing I ever did. Not because of what it made me look like to anyone, because of what it was. And because of what came back to me from it. A woman who saw me clearly, who had every reason not to trust and chose to anyway, who looked at this quiet patch of land and this quiet man and said this is where I want to be. Not the young man's dream of it, not the romantic version, just a real woman freely choosing. That land's different when you're older. That land's like something you didn't know you'd been waiting for. Henry is grown now, has his own place, a wife, 2 kids. He comes back to the ranch every month or so, and he walks the fence lines with me the way I walked them with him when he was a boy, not because they need walking, but because we like to. Nora makes coffee strong enough to strip paint, and she brings it out to the porch, and the 3 of us sit there in the late afternoon when the light goes gold across the grass, and there's nothing that needs to be said. She'll put her hand on my arm sometimes. Just her hand on my arm, the way she's done it for 30 years now, and I'll look at her and she'll be looking out at the land, and I know that look. It's the look of a person who is exactly where they mean to be. I found her at a crossroads in the snow. Or Della found her, Della and I. Either way I stopped. That's the part I'm proud of, that I stopped.